Welcome to the Troy Public Library. I'm Anna Barlow, an Adult Services Librarian, and it is my privilege to host tonight's program, Monsters, Santa, and Water Goddesses, Festive Holidays Around the World. This is the time of year when so many holidays are being celebrated, and there are so many unique and interesting traditions in different cultures that we don't often get a glimpse of. Tonight, we are lucky to have Michelle Fenneberg to share several of those traditions with us. Who knows, we might just find one or a few that we decide to adopt for our own. Michelle is from South Africa and has had the good fortune to live in 5 countries, including China, Germany, and the United Arab Emirates, where she has had many experiences and been privileged to meet and befriend special people who have shared their unique celebrations with her, providing authentic insights into the normally unknown. There will be a time at the end of Michelle's presentation for questions, so please add those to the Q&A or the chat as we go along. And as I turn this over to Michelle, I'd like to recognize the Friends of the Troy Public Library and thank them for their generous sponsorship of this program and the many others that we bring you. Michelle?
Thank you, Anna, for that wonderful introduction. Now I have to have full disclosure here and let you all know that I've known Anna for a number of years, and I met her in China. And the Troy community is really lucky to have a librarian like Anna, because she has so much knowledge of travel around the world and different cultures. And there've been many times where I've turned to Anna and actually asked her, please, can you supply me with photographs for things that I'm writing? And there are some that even appear in the presentation tonight. So you are very privileged. Thank you, Anna, for having me tonight. As Anna said, I am from South Africa. And growing up in South Africa, if you just pause for a moment and consider, as we head into winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, in the Southern Hemisphere, they're heading to summer. So Christmas in summertime is Christmas is right in the middle of summer, so it's really hot. And in South Africa, people have barbecues for summer and for Christmas. And the other name for a barbecue in South Africa is a braai. And so as an adult, I moved to Germany and I discovered that Christmas was completely different there to what I had experienced in South Africa, not only in the foods and the decorations, but even the day that it was celebrated on the 24th of December. And then I made friends with a Spanish woman, and her Christmas was also completely different. And that piqued my interest. And so as we traveled around the world, I would speak to other expats and find out from them what their Christmases were like, and started putting together talks on Christmas, but then it grew to other things and other celebrations around this time of year. And then I started writing little snippets of celebrations on Facebook, and I've now recently launched a YouTube channel, not only on traditions, but other things that I've discovered around the world. And it is loads of fun. But let me just say, I am not an academic. I'm not an expert on these subjects. This is what I discover when I chat to people and find out what it's like in their family and what they do. And it is really difficult for me to get photographs. So some of the photos I'm showing tonight are not that wonderful, but they still just give you a feel and an idea. Right, so the first celebration that we're going to look at tonight is Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos in Mexico. And we're starting with that because it starts this weekend, 31st of October, and it runs through to the 2nd of November. And from the name, it sounds like something really dreadful, but it's not horrible and frightening like Halloween. It's actually a celebration for relatives who have passed away. And what happens is that the families decorate the graves of their relatives with marigold flowers. And the idea is that the scent of the flowers will waft in the air and help the spirits of their relatives find their way back to their grave or their home if they've set up an altar in their home. And then they can speak out and speak to their relatives about what's concerning them and spend time with them. So it's a very important and happy occasion where they are reunited with the spirits of the relatives. So a lot of effort goes into decorating the grave, as you can see over here. And those beautiful paper cuttings hanging up behind the grave, they are called papel picada. And a great deal of detail goes into creating those. And then on the grave, they leave food for their relative, as well as maybe a blanket or some warm clothing. And if a child has died, then they'll put toys on there, and they'll put the favorite alcohol of an adult. And then in the evening, they all gather around and have a picnic at the grave and sing songs and dance, and some people even sleep overnight. Now, it's said that the food that is left there, there's no nutritional value left in the food afterwards once the ancestors have eaten from it. So here is an altar that's not at a graveyard. It's either built up in someone's house or in a more public place, and there are different levels of the altar, and you have to put certain things on certain levels. But this, because it's a bit closer, you can see that the different types of food, this person obviously liked Coca-Cola, and then they always have a photograph or a few photographs of the person up there. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the skulls. The skulls are a symbol of the celebration as well. And there are often sugar and chocolate skulls given to children, which they really enjoy on this occasion. And another symbol is this character called La Catrina. And La Catrina was created by an artist called Posada at the beginning of the 1900s. And it was a caricature that he carved out, and it was just the head and the shoulders, and it was a skeleton woman wearing a big floppy hat. And it was actually a parody to the wealthy Mexican women who were looking to Europe for their roots instead of looking internally to their own indigenous roots. So he was actually mocking them. But this was taken further by different artists, and now there's a full body Katrina, and this is one of the symbols of this celebration. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about are the Pashtun in the Alpine region of Europe. So the first recordings of the Pashtun are actually in the year 500, where they were writing about these wild demonic creatures that were making a lot of noise and dancing in the streets. And the idea was that they would frighten out the bad spirits of winter. And as Christianity spread across Europe, Christianity wanted to be attractive to the pagan people. And so they adopted a lot of the rituals that the pagans had in their day-to-day life. And one of them was the Pashtun. And the Pashtun were part of Christianity until the start of the 1900s, when it was again abandoned. And I think that is probably when the Pashtun started to die out, because there are very few places in the Alps that actually have a Pashtun celebration. And I lived in a little village in Germany that was won over from the town of Kirchseon, where they do this, continue this tradition, and they revived it in around the 1950s. And so there's a society for the Pashtun, and they carve these masks out of wood, and then they create these costumes that are, these ones are rather woolly. But what was written in the old writings said that they had, their skins were rauch, which is a German word to bring across the idea a rough and hairy skin. But the word rauch in German also means smoke. And so when this tradition was incorporated with Christianity, frankincense started coming into this tradition as well. So they bring frankincense when they march around and parade to blow the smoke, to blow the bad demons out. So there are three types of Pashtun. They're the Schöne Pashtun, which create the music with bells and drums. And then they're the ordinary Pashtun, which you can see over here in the circle. And their masks will always be werewolves or European animals and birds, anything from European mythology. They'll never be an African elephant, for example. And the third type of Pashtun is the goddess Holder, or the goddess Pester, but I'll talk about her in a moment. So they come around from suburb to suburb on different weekends in the weeks leading up to Christmas and into the New Year. And it's very, very clear where they're going to be. So everyone knows which part of the town they're going to be in on each weekend. And then they go from house to house and frighten away the spirits. And at this particular house, the people always let the children sit upstairs and watch from the upstairs windows, because it can be rather scary. And especially when they come at night, and then they have flaming torches, and it's very, very dramatic. So here you can see one of the masks from closer up, and really wonderful handiwork to create a wooden mask like this. And this one has an open mouth so that you can actually toss some coins in, so that they can maintain the costumes and keep this tradition going. Now back to the goddess Pester. She has two faces, one that looks forward, one that looks back, one that looks to the new year, one that looks to the past. Male, female, good, bad, all the contradictions you can see in the goddess Pester. And in some places in Europe, and really there are only a handful of places that still have this tradition. In some places on around the 5th of January, they actually have a face-off, you could call it, in a field where they have the good versus the bad, and of course the good triumphs, and so they will have good luck for the coming year. So someone very kindly made a little video on their cell phone for me, just to give you an idea of what this is like. So this is the goddess Pester that we can see here, and you will see as the video proceeds, you'll see the other side of her, and let's watch. So that gives you a little taste of the Pashtun. I'd now like to speak about Saint Nicholas. So Saint Nicholas was a 4th century Greek bishop based in Myra, which is today in Turkey. And he was known for his secret gift giving. And what he did was he'd really help poor families, and especially those with children, if he saw their shoes at the doorway, or maybe perhaps at the fireplace, if he was at their home, he would slip coins into their shoes so that they wouldn't know that he was helping them, but they'd be helped. And so he became very famous for this, and the tradition of celebrating him spread throughout Europe. And it's still celebrated today in most places in Europe, although it's not very big, except in Holland. This is the big celebration. So around mid-November, Saint Nicholas arrives on his ship from Turkey, and it's broadcast live on television, and everyone goes to the harbor to meet him if they live close enough. And then he spends the next 3 to 4 weeks traveling around Holland, visiting all the children on a horse-drawn carriage. You can see that he has lots of helpers called Zwart Piet. This has become rather controversial now with the blackface movement at the moment. So Zwart Piet, I think, is quite likely to die out, but has been there for a very long time as part of this tradition. And then he goes from town to town, village to village, and he meets all the children. And then on the 5th of December in the evening, the children polish their shoes and they put out some carrots for the horse. And these little biscuits over here are called peppernoten. So they are part of this tradition and celebration. And every child gets a huge or a big chocolate letter of the alphabet, which is the first initial of their name. So I would get an M. And they're all ready for the evening and they go to bed. And the next morning, when they wake up, there are gifts for the children. And this is the big gift giving celebration. They don't really get gifts at Christmas time. So the children don't have school on this day, so they can open their gifts and spend the day playing with all their toys And then the next day they go back to school, and they might get something small at Christmas time, but this is the big occasion. It's much more low key in Germany. In Germany, St. Nicholas will come and visit you on the evening of the 5th of December, and he brings his golden book. And written in his golden book are all the good and bad things that the children have done throughout the year. And they all need to step up one at a time to hear what they've done. And if they have a bad conscience, then they're rather afraid. But at the end of this, St. Nicholas gives them a Hessian sack filled with fruit and nuts and a St. Nicholas chocolate. I wasn't able to get a St. Nicholas chocolate. I used a Father Christmas chocolate here, but you can see, you get the idea. And that actually reminds me, so when the Dutch arrived in New York, they brought their tradition of Sinterklaas with them. And so in English, it became Santa Claus. And that is where the tradition and the name comes from. Now let's travel north to Sweden and meet Saint Lucia. Saint Lucia was a 3rd century martyr that brought food to the Christians hiding in the catacombs. And in order to carry more food and to free up her hands, she put her candles on her head to light the way. And so it was said that she brought light into the darkness, and that was taken further, that she brought the word of Christianity and the light of Christianity into the darkness of paganism. And this is celebrated on the 13th of December, which used to be the longest night of the year before the Gregorian calendar. And every town and every school chooses a Saint Lucia to lead the procession when they go to old age homes and hospitals to visit people and sing songs to them. And they bring these little buns, saffron buns, that's what she's got on the tray over there, for the people to enjoy. And then there are many Saint Lucia choirs that gather to sing all over the place. And of course, it's a nightmare for any mother if her daughter is chosen to be Saint Lucia with real candles on her head, because all the mother worries about is my child's hair going to set on fire? So in recent years, as you can see in that younger girl over there, it looks like she's got sort of electric candles on her head instead of the real thing. Saint Lucia is actually also still celebrated in Italy as well. Their celebration's a little different. It's with bonfires and fireworks, and the children write little notes that they leave on the windowsill with their wish list, because she also brings some gifts. Right, let's move across to Hanukkah. So Hanukkah takes place on the 25th day of Kislev on the Hebrew calendar. And the Hebrew calendar is a lunar calendar, not a solar calendar, so the date moves all the time, but it's pretty much between the end of November and the beginning of January. And this year, it'll take place between the 10th of December and the 18th of December. So what is this celebration all about? Well, the Maccabees took back the second temple in Jerusalem from the Hellenistic people. And when they claimed their temple back, they wanted to light their sacred oil in their temple, and they only found one jar that was still sealed. And so they opened that jar and they lit the candle, or they lit the oil, the sacred oil, and it was only going to last for one day. And then they went off to press more oil and have it blessed so that they could do this every day. But by some extraordinary miracle, this oil that should only have lasted for one day actually lasted for 8. And so it was declared that this miracle should be celebrated. And so the tradition of Hanukkah was put on the Jewish calendar. And it's not a very big celebration in the Jewish world, but it's an important one that takes place at this time of year. And so in every household, there's this menorah, which has place for 8 candles plus the 9th candle. The 9th candle is lit, and it is used to light the other candles. So on the first evening, the first candle is lit and 3 blessings are said. And then on the next evening, 2 candles are lit. And then all the other evenings, just 2 blessings are said. In Israel, you have these, they're also called Hanukkahs. You have Hanukkahs or menorahs in shopping centers or at traffic roundabouts, just like you would here with Christmas trees. And after the candles, well, this celebration's become rather commercialized here in the USA. And because I think because it's so close to Christmas. And previously, after lighting the candle, the children would receive geld, which is the Yiddish word for money, from their grandparents. But today they now receive gifts. So they'll receive 8 gifts, 1 on each night. And then the children from a very young age, they learn a whole bunch of songs to celebrate on this occasion. And the songs, even though they're quite depressing because they talk about persecution, they talk about rising up above the persecution and succeeding and triumphing. Then they often play with this little toy called a dreidel, and you spin it like a spinning top. And if it lands on the G, then you give a coin. And if it lands on the H, you get to take half out. Some of the dreidels are hollow, so you can actually put the coins inside, but otherwise you just collect coins on the side. And it says there, Nun Gimel Haitian, which means a big miracle happened here or there. That last word shin will change to here or there, depending on whether you're playing in Israel or playing elsewhere in the world. And of course, to celebrate all this wonderful, miraculous oil, they eat foods that have been prepared in oil, like potato latkes that are fried in oil, or donuts. And the Israeli woman that I interviewed about this tradition was telling me that her grandmother would always make the donuts, but she would leave them hollow inside. And then she'd just put piping bags with different fillings on the table so everyone could fill their own donuts for the celebration. Now let's move to Christmas in Germany. So why Germany? We've all heard that Christmas in Germany is amazing, and I assure you it is. So in the weeks before Christmas, every big city and every small village will all have a Christmas market. So in the big cities, the Christmas markets are a permanent fixture for about 4 weeks. But even the smallest village will have their own Christmas market, even if it is just for 2 or 3 hours. And the Germans really appreciate good value and good craftsmanship and things that are well made and good quality. So they strive very hard to have those sorts of stands at these Christmas markets. You can mostly buy wonderful handicrafts, beautifully made and good quality. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to go out, meet with people, socialize with them, look around at the stands, drink a glühwein with friends, have hot chestnuts and hold them in your hands when it's so cold. There's just an absolutely wonderful, magical atmosphere about these markets. If you ever get the opportunity to go to Germany at Christmas time, I'd highly recommend it. So in the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas, it's Advent, and just about every German home has a little, let me just add here that there are regional differences throughout the countries and throughout Europe, but mostly they will have their Advent wreath, and it'll have 4 candles on it. And 4 Sundays before Christmas, you'll light your first candle. And then 3 Sundays before Christmas, you'll light the second candle. So you'll have 2 burning. And German women are fabulous bakers. I always feel very incompetent next to them. And they'll always have these fabulous German Christmas biscuits called Plätzchen. And then people will invite you over on a Sunday afternoon at around 4 p.m. to come and have coffee and Plätzchen. And it's already getting dark. And you sit around and you nibble on your biscuits and you drink a coffee or a glühwein. And there's this German word, Gemütlichkeit, which means just comfortable, cozy together and being together. And it's really wonderful to experience that. Here's some more German baking, the German Christmas cake, which is called Stollen, and the various biscuits. And many German people also make their own Advent calendars. So in this household, there are 3 family members. So every 3rd day, someone will get something. And it'll be a little lip balm or a poem or a cookie or a candy or something small like that. They go to a lot of trouble. And one day when I was visiting a friend, her daughter came in with a box that she had created as a gift for her friend, an advent calendar, and it had 24 jars. And in each jar, there was something like a poem or a cookie. Not a lot of money had gone into it, but a lot of time and effort. And you do find that with the German people. If they are friends with you, they're going to take a lot of time and effort to do something nice for you. It's not just oh, let's grab this off the shelf and give it to you. They think about their gifts very carefully. Another thing that they have in Germany are the nativity scenes. Here's a huge one, and it's even got a desert scene with it. And in this town of Ebersberg, they've preserved some very old nativity scenes, and they set them up in shop windows at Christmas time. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but most shops in Germany are closed on a Sunday. So there's not a lot of traffic. And so it's a wonderful thing on a Sunday afternoon to go and wander downtown and look in the shop windows. And this little booklet over here has a map in it that shows you where all these nativity scenes are being displayed. And finally, the Christmas tree. Okay, straight up, this is not a German Christmas tree. I took this photograph. This tree belongs to one of my neighbors here, and they're actually a Hindu family. But it was such a beautiful tree, I needed to take the picture. The Germans really prefer to have a natural Christmas tree. So don't pull out a fake one. If you're in Germany, they enjoy the real thing. And you know, if you go back in German history, the forests played a great role in their history, and there was a lot of tree worship. And so that's why the tree has been part of German culture for many, many years. But if one looks back at the history of the Christmas tree, it's even written that the Romans used to put out evergreen branches in their homes for their midwinter festival. So there's something in the story of branches and trees and winter, middle of winter. But the first recording of the Christmas tree was in Latvia and Estonia and Protestant Germany with the guilds. And they would put up a Christmas tree in their guild hall at Christmas time, and they'd have all sorts of things that you could eat hanging on the tree. And the children of the workers were able to come in to the guild hall on Christmas Day and take something off the tree. So that was the start of the tradition. And then many Protestant homes adopted Christmas trees. The wealthy people started having Christmas trees in their homes. And then in many royal families, they had Christmas trees. And as those daughters were married out to other European royal families, they took their Christmas tree tradition with them. And so Queen Victoria even had a Christmas tree as a young child, but it was a small one. And then when she married Prince Albert, they had a big Christmas tree, and a photograph or picture was taken of the whole family standing in front of the tree. And once that was in the press, then the idea got in everyone's head that everyone needed a Christmas tree. And that is how it traveled around the world. Now I need to have a sip of water. So the next Christmas I'd like to look at is Christmas in Poland. So why did I choose Christmas in Poland? When I interviewed the people from Poland, their Christmas really struck me as something with meaning. This was a nation that sat down and really thought about the reasons about why they were celebrating this. So they also celebrate Advent in the weeks leading up to Christmas. And in that time, you're supposed to give up all excesses. So the person said to me, if you like discos and parties, you give them up. They also give up meat, and they go to church very often, and they hear different masses. One of them will talk about how Mary got the news from the angel Gabriel that she was going to have this baby Jesus. And then on Christmas Eve, on the 24th, people fast until the first star appears in the sky, and then they're allowed to sit down to their Christmas dinner. And there is no meat at this table, and there are 12 dishes, and the 12 dishes represent the 12 apostles. And there's always one extra seat left at the table for either a relative that's passed away or for someone that might just turn up at the door so that they'd feel very welcome. And then the family sits down and enjoys this meal. And then they have another lovely tradition where they break wafers. So everyone in the room will break a wafer, well, we'll break two wafers with everyone else. Because if I were to break wafers with my mother, we would stand and break one wafer and I would wish her good things for the new year. And then we would break another wafer and she would wish me good things for the new year. And that's a lovely tradition that they have in Poland. I don't have a picture for you, but just as an aside, the character that brings Christmas gifts in Poland is called Gwiazdor, and he is dressed in a dirty sheepskin, and apparently he's rather a frightening character. He's got coal dust and straw all over him. Not a very friendly looking guy. I just thought that was really interesting. Now we're going to move across to Catalonia in Spain, and they have some extraordinary traditions. So the first one is Tio de Nadal. So you might have one in your cellar, or you need to go into the forest and get a log, and you give him 2 legs and a face and a little red hat, and you cover him in a blanket to keep him warm, and then you need to feed him regularly and make sure that he's well fed, and he loves citrus fruit and he loves nuts. And at night you feed him and you go to bed, and when you wake up in the morning, oh, you just discover the citrus shells and the nut shells lying around. And so you look after him all the way until Christmas Eve. And then on Christmas Eve, the children gather around and they sing a Tio de Nadal song. And when it gets to a certain part in the song, they have to tap him with a wooden stick, and then they remove the blanket, and voila, there are a whole lot of little gifts. So Christmas is not the big gift-giving time in Spain. The gifts actually come with the 3 kings on the 6th of January, which actually makes more sense because the 3 kings brought the gifts to the baby Jesus. But the kids get some small gifts on this evening. And I will also say that a lot of these traditions, everyone has said to me that I've spoken to over the years, their traditions are slowly changing, and everyone's getting Santa coming on Christmas Eve, and many of these other traditions are dying out. So the next character I want to speak to you about, I mentioned this character in a talk about 2 years ago, and one of the ladies in the audience did not believe me. And she went home and Googled it. She told me afterwards because she thought, no, this is absolute nonsense. And it was absolutely true. So let me start with a little story first. In 1232, St. Francis of Assisi created the first lifetime nativity scene. And in that scene, he got people from the village to stand in certain places, and you had Mary and Joseph and the baby, and you had the shepherds, and you had the 3 wise men. And this tradition has largely died out in Italy because they really much prefer the carvings, the carved nativity scenes, but it moved west over to Spain, where they still do this tradition every year, where people from the village will dress up in these various characters, and then you can go for a walk and see the scenes. So, of course, there is the scene with the shepherds looking after their sheep. Now, just imagine for a moment that you were a young shepherd boy out in the fields in the middle of nowhere, and you've got to go. You've really got to go. Well, there are no public toilets out in the middle of nowhere. You have to use the bushes. And so our character, his name is El Cagnar, and he is going in the bushes. So they always have an El Cagnar with a big fake bottom attached to him for modesty, and also, I'm told, because it's very cold. And El Cagnar will be standing somewhere over there, a little bit further away, where no one can get too close. But this is the only character in the nativity scene that the children want to see. And they just storm into the nativity scene, running around, trying to spot El Cagnar. And you can buy these little figures. So very strange. You can Google it, but I promise you it is the truth. Let's go down to Mexico now, where it's getting a little warmer. Just a piece of information. I don't know if you know that the poinsettia comes from Mexico. So if you include one in your Christmas celebrations, well, you're being very multicultural. They have a tradition called the Las Posadas, and I don't have a photograph to show you. Unfortunately, it's been very difficult to try and get one, but I got this picture. They have parades where Mary and Joseph are traveling with their donkey, trying to find accommodation for the night. And if you recall, all the inns were full. So they have these parades where someone dresses up as Mary and another as Joseph, and maybe they have a little donkey, and they go from house to house. And they stop at a house and they sing a song. And in the song it says, you know, please, we're tired and weary. Do you have place for us in your inn? And the people in the house go, no, no, go away. We have no space. And so they go from one house to the other until they get to the pre-arranged home where the people inside say, yes, yes, come in. We've got space for you all. And then everybody goes into that home and they have a meal together and they drink some hot punch and they just celebrate and spend time together. And then, of course, there's always a piñata. And these piñatas have 7 picos, the 7 pointy things that stick out. And if you're lucky and you get one of those picos, then you've got a little container to hang on to when the piñata splits open and you can quickly gather lots of loot for yourself. And just as in Spain, the gifts also come on the 6th of January. So in anticipation of the arrival of the 3 kings, the children write their wish lists on a piece of paper and they attach it to a balloon and they send the balloon way up in the sky to the 3 kings. And on this day of the 6th of January, everyone eats 3 kings bread, the rosca de reyes 3 kings bread, and baked inside the bread is a little figure of the baby Jesus. I don't know if you can see. There we go. And if you're lucky enough to get that little figure in your piece of bread, well, then you are responsible for supplying the tamales at the next celebration, which is on the 2nd of February. And that celebrates Mary taking the baby to the temple for the very first time. Let's zoot along to Trinidad and Tobago to find out one of their interesting Christmas traditions. They have choirs called paranderos, and these singers start preparing in September already. Everybody loves Christmas so much. So not only are there singers preparing, but the housewives are soaking the cherries and the raisins in rum for the best Christmas cake that you could imagine at Christmas time. So the paranderos start practicing, and there's a big competition, a national competition in October to find the best singers. And I think they get to sing on national television and have many grand performances going on from there. But in the weeks leading up to Christmas, the paranderos go from house to house, singing to the people, and then they are rewarded with great things to eat and some punch, and it's all fun and happy. And in anticipation of Christmas, it seems, from what I understand, that people will paint their living room every year so that it looks good and put up new curtains every year, and they'll do a lot of cleaning so that their home is spick and span for the celebrations. And then they celebrate together with their Muslim friends and their Hindu friends, and they have a wonderful Christmas time together. Right, let's have a quick look at some decorations. In Europe, it's quite common to have straw decorations for Christmas. Here's a lovely metal decoration that I got at a Christmas market in Germany. And this is my German smoky man. You can take his head off, and then you put a little flammable pyramid inside him, something quite small. And you put his head back, well, you light it, you put his head back on, and then smoke comes out of his mouth, and it creates a really nice atmosphere. And then there's the Christmas cracker. Now, I was horrified when we moved to Germany and we were celebrating our first Christmas Christmas, and I couldn't find any Christmas crackers because this was my symbol of Christmas, but there were none to be found. And I thought, okay, it's probably only in the English-speaking world, until I arrived here in the USA and I discovered that it's not common in the USA either. So what is the Christmas cracker? Well, you will grab one end of your Christmas cracker and someone else will grab the other end and you'll pull it and it makes a bang sound. And then a whole lot of junk falls out, a little silly piece of plastic toy that you'll throw away in 2 minutes, and a paper hat that you might wear on your head during your dinner. And maybe there'll be a poem or a riddle or some interesting information that you share with the table to encourage discussion. So it really is a whole lot of junk, but it's my symbol of Christmas. And it was invented by this guy called Tom Smith in London in 1847. And he had a company where he made candy. And his little bonbons were like this size and they had paper wrapped around them. But he had printed on the paper something interesting, a rhyme, a poem, something was written on the paper. And one night he was sitting at his fireplace, just enjoying the sound of the fire. And he thought to himself, he'd really like to incorporate that sound in his bonbon. And so he experimented with trying to make crackling sounds. And the only way he could get a decent sound was to make something much bigger. And so the Christmas cracker was created. And it's very common in the Commonwealth, but not in many other places in the world. Here's some Christmas decorations from South Africa, made with beads and wire. And now we're going to have a look at Kwanzaa. So I had not heard of Kwanzaa until I moved to the USA. And Kwanzaa is a Swahili word, which means first fruits. And this tradition was created by a man called Maulana Karenga in 1966 during the Black Freedom Movement. And he felt that the African Americans had no traditions that they could really grab onto that were theirs. They were surrounded by everyone else's European traditions and other traditions, but nothing that had special meaning to them. So he looked to Africa to see what was in Africa that people could identify with, and found common threads throughout Africa and put these traditions together. At first it was you couldn't be religious and have Kwanzaa, but today you could still be a Christian and celebrate Kwanzaa. It doesn't matter, they can live together. So what are the symbols of Kwanzaa? You need a mat, a kinara, which is a candle holder, 7 candles, crops, corn, a unity cup, you give thanks, gifts, you may have a poster, a red and black and green flag, and African books and artwork. So I found this exhibit at a museum in Chicago, which gives you a little idea. You can see the candle holder there, and the candles need to be red, black, and green. Down the bottom of the left, you can see the unity cup and the flag. There's the corn over there, which is very important, lying on the mat. And then the crops, which are the fruit or flowers, and the poster in the background. So here is a lady called Leah. She's the one that told me all about the tradition. And so she's standing there with her Kwanzaa creation. And there are her children. And there are 7 principles to Kwanzaa. And there's no specific way that you have to celebrate. And Leah said what she has done with her friends is that they celebrate over 7 days. It starts on the 26th of December and ends on the 1st of January. And they've organized it in such a way that you go to a different person's house on each day. And then they discuss one of these principles on that day. So on the first day, they discuss unity, the family unit, being together, the community, the nation, the race. And this is a very important day on their calendar. Then the next day you go to someone else's house and you discuss self-determination. You define who you are and you name and you speak for yourself. And then collective work and responsibility is how you can build the community together and take responsibility for each other's problems and help each other. And then on cooperative economics, they will go and support Black business. And then on the day of purpose, they think about how you can make your community more beautiful, and what you can do to make it better than what you inherited. And on the day of creativity, you might go and watch a play or hear some music, or the children will create pictures for relatives in the family, paint something. And then on the final day of faith, when they consider believing in the people around you and your parents and your teachers and your leaders. And I think this is a really wonderful thing, something we could actually all do in our lives. Just take some time to think about these important issues. Right, we're going to move into New Year now. So we're going to look at New Year in Russia. When the communists took over, of course, all religion was banned. And as we saw before, Christianity and pagan religions joined together. Well, people don't want to give up their old traditions that easily. So a whole lot of Christmas things became part of New Year. So they have Grandfather Frost, who brings the gifts, and he is helped by his granddaughter, Sneguruchka. And this is a very big celebration in Russia. The hostess will be organizing weeks in advance, and by mid-December, she will know exactly what the menu for the evening is. And it's the greatest honor if it is described that you had a rich table. So there's a lot of pressure to have lots of fantastic food on that table. And on the evening, all the ladies will wear long evening gowns, and they'll have their hair and makeup professionally done. And the men will wear tuxedos. And the small children will arrive dressed in Halloween sorts of costumes, and they'll have lots of fun, and then they will change into their smart clothing afterwards as well before dinner. And then everyone sits down together for this fabulous feast. And they have this lovely tradition where sometime during the dinner or after the dinner, they will go around the table, and everyone at the table will say something nice about someone else at the table, talking about something good that someone has done for them throughout the year, or in a way that someone's helped them. And they spend a lot of time doing this. And it's a very moving experience to hear everyone acknowledging everyone else at the table. Then just as New Year approaches, as the clock starts striking 12, the champagne bottle needs to be opened, and the glasses need to be poured, and they need to be finished before the clock finishes chiming. And then people who have certain wishes for the new year, some of them write it on a piece of paper, and they burn the paper, and they drop the ashes in their champagne, and then they drink it. And that's supposed to bring them good luck. So in Haiti, on New Year, they eat a lot of pumpkin soup. Now, why is that? Well, the slave owners, the white slave owners, would not allow the slaves to eat pumpkin during slavery. So as soon as the white slave owners were gone and Haiti declared independence, the first thing everybody wanted to eat was pumpkin soup. And their Independence Day coincides with New Year. So a lot of pumpkin soup's eaten on the day. There's a tradition that the children need to go and pay their respects to their grandparents and their aunts and uncles. And if they don't, it's frowned upon. They go from house to house, visiting all these relatives. And after they've said all nice things to their relatives, they get rewarded with a bowl of pumpkin soup. So a lot of soup is eaten on that day. Similarly, in Bulgaria, the grandchildren also have a duty to go and visit their grandparents. And they take this little stick which is called a surovachka. And it is a fruit tree, a branch of a fruit tree that's decorated in ribbons or wool. And those are mini bagels that are attached to this one. And sometimes there's real fruit. And then they say a certain rhyme, and they have to tap their grandparents on the back with the stick, and the grandparents, and wish their grandparents good luck for the new year. But the children don't mind doing it because their grandparents reward them with money afterwards. So it's no problem to do that. Now, if you're in Mexico and you take a suitcase and you walk around your house with it a few times on New Year's Eve, you're guaranteed that you're going to go on a trip in the next year. Another tradition in Mexico is that people make an effigy that they will burn. So we saw this in Mexico just this past Christmas, New Year, we were there. And I saw this in someone's backyard. And they will write on a little piece of paper all the dreadful things that happened in their life in the past year, and the toxic people they want to get rid of or don't want in their lives. They will write that on a piece of paper, put it in the clothing of the effigy, and they will burn it. And hopefully that is all past. And I am pretty sure that a lot of people are going to write COVID on that piece of paper this year. And they have a similar tradition, the same tradition in Ecuador, where you can buy these effigies. They're called Monegotes, and you can just buy the head if you want and add your own body, or you can even buy these cartoon character types. And in the city squares, they make huge ones that are 2 or 3 stories high, and people put their little notes in them, all the things they want to be rid of, and they get burnt. And then when the embers are smoking at the end, you jump through the fire or through the smoke 12 times. And that's an ancient Andean tradition that's supposed to cleanse you so that you're clean to go into the new year. Here's a drive-by picture of some more Monegotes on the side of the road, just so you can get an idea how big they are. And then they have another really funny tradition in Ecuador, where the men are allowed to dress up as women, and they are called the widows of the old year. So on Old Year's Eve, you find many men dressed up in women's clothing, and they block the roads, and they demand money to let you go by. And a lot of alcohol is also consumed, so that by the early evening, there's some very not well people wandering the streets, the widows of the old year. In Spain, it is said that if you can eat 12 grapes as the clock starts chiming, and eat them and swallow them all before it finishes chiming midnight, you will have good luck in the new year. So my one Spanish friend told me that her mother always sits in a corner away from everyone else, very seriously trying to eat all these grapes to be sure that she has good luck in the new year. Now let's go down to Brazil. In Brazil for New Year, you dress in white, sometimes blue, but mostly white. Unless, of course, you want lots of money in the new year, then you'll wear gold or silver. Or if you're looking for love, of course, you need to wear red. And everyone gathers together for parties. And if you're lucky enough to live near the Copacabana, along the 8-kilometer stretch of beach, people gather to bring gifts to the goddess Lamania, the water goddess, or Yemania. And Lamania is a combination of an African deity that came across with the slaves, and she's been incorporated with the Virgin Mary and various other goddesses to create this goddess. And the people have little boats, and they put fake money on it and cheap perfume, and they launch these boats out into the ocean to her as gifts, hoping that she will look after them throughout the year, and they throw flowers into the sea as well. And then that evening, New Year's Eve, the city organizes a big fireworks display, which comes out of the ocean, and it's supposed to be really spectacular. And the next day, well, it's a huge disaster. You certainly can't go to the beach because all the debris has floated back onto the beach, and a big cleanup operation is needed. So we have covered a lot of distance this evening from one country to the other. I hope that you found some of these traditions interesting. Maybe you'll incorporate something in your own celebrations and holidays coming up. If you like this sort of thing, I have a Facebook page called Multicultural Musings. And I've recently started my YouTube video, Multicultural Musings. It's a bit different. It's not so much about the traditions, the YouTube. It's about all the interesting things I've found around the world. But I'm always looking for new pictures, new information, interesting things that anyone wants to share with me. So that's my email address. I would absolutely love to hear from you. And thank you for being on this journey with me tonight.
Thank you, Michelle. That was fascinating. I'm not sure which country I want to go to first to experience some of these. So we have a couple of questions, and if anybody has any questions, now would be the time to put them in the chat. We did have one, I think it was, I can't say it. It was the first one where you have the different face on the front and the back.
Oh, yes. Okay. The goddess Pester.
And dancing around. So somebody asked which countries celebrate that. Is it just
It's
one?
definitely Germany and Austria. I'm not sure if Switzerland does it too. They might, but definitely Germany and Austria.
Okay. And what is your personal favorite? Do you have a favorite?
You know, those Pashtun are actually, they were so scary and horrifying when I first saw them. I thought, oh, but actually they have a place in my heart for some reason. I've seen them a few times. I've enjoyed that.
Mhm. And do you celebrate any of these particular traditions
No,
personally?
I've been very bad. I always say I will, and I have stacks of recipes that people have given me over the years, and I think, okay, we'll do something from another country, but somehow we just never get to doing it. Maybe with COVID now, when we can't travel and we can't go anywhere, we'll have a multicultural Christmas.
There you go. You could have a different one every day.
Exactly. Oh, exactly.
Someone says to look up Yalda,
Okay.
Yalda.
Thank you.
Mhm. I think I'm just going to comment. One of the things I like about being in the Detroit area is that you can experience some of these because of the various ethnic groups that we have. So like right now there's the altars for Dia de los Muertos at the Detroit Institute of Arts. And I believe there's also a similar celebration going on in Mexican Town. So I guess if you look, you can find some of the traditions and get a little bit of a taste of some of the traditions. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for being with us. Doesn't look like we have any more questions. I'm going to just check again here. So, but thank you so much for joining us. It was so enlightening and interesting and fun. And yeah, I would love to experience most of those traditions myself. And hopefully, I think I'm going to have to eat those 12 grapes and make that wish.
Yes, we all need to do that.
Yeah. Okay. And so everybody who's out there joining us tonight, thank you for being here. And there's a survey afterwards. It'll be in your web browser when we disconnect, and we appreciate your feedback. Okay. So with that, I will say goodnight to everyone, and hopefully you've picked up some tradition that you're going to look more into and maybe try yourself. Okay. Good night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.